Okay, so it is my pleasure to invite or welcome John. Today we're going to actually talk about a really interesting topic. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm going to let John tell you a little bit about himself and what we're talking about today. And with that, sir, I turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Well, you can see from my video icon that I live in Arlington. Well, you can see my name. I live in Arlington, Virginia, right across the Potomac River from Washington, D.C. It's kind of cloudy this afternoon, not like Gregory's background at all. This is the end of a very busy week for me. This is literally the fifth presentation I have done in 6 days. Did one for my own user group yesterday. It was very interesting. It's a new topic called Add NAS to Your Router. NAS is Network Attached Storage, meaning anything that you can attach by USB, such as a hard drive, solid state drive, or a flash drive. And that is something I'm going to submit to Judy Taylor at APCUG later today, so that it'll be available for all the groups to consider. But for now, a little bit about my background. I'm a retiree. I retired in 2020, just when the pandemic hit. One of the reasons was where I worked in a large group, 210 people on one floor, and I walked by the office of the guy who kept our corporate laptops working, and he was sneezing up a storm. And I thought, I am utterly amazed that his management didn't say to him, go home. Didn't have a mask on either. So I have had more time to work with user groups since then. I was born here in the county where I live, Arlington County, and I worked as a software engineer for various contractors for federal government agencies for about 30 years. Last 14 of those was for a firm supporting Homeland Security's Office of Biometric Identity Management, which is a fancy way of saying the people who run the automated fingerprint system for Homeland Security. I have used my computer over the years for all sorts of things. So today we're going to talk about a couple of those. Primary topic is, have you ever lost your phone? And we're going to talk about various ways to recover them. I see that Sue is using her iPhone to watch today, and I suspect David is using something similar because he appears to be in his car. And it's the first time I've actually seen somebody with video turned on while he's in a car on a Zoom meeting. That's pretty cool. I hope you're not trying to drive at the same time. A little bit about my background. These are daffodils that I shot video of in my yard about a year ago. They come out about this time of year in my county. And I made what's called a Zoom loop, where it ends on the same frame that it starts. So when Zoom repeats the video, you can't tell that it ended and restarted. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the very first thing I'm going to do is show you a little bit about how your phone can interact with today's presentation. Because when I mention an app, or I mention a website, or I mention something else that you might wish to partake of, you're going to see something called a QR code. And for those of you who have no idea what that is, I'm going to show it to you on I think the first slide. And I have QR codes scattered throughout the presentation so that you can, if you have a spare portable device, David and Sue, you can scan the QR code so that you can access the website. You can load the app onto your phone. You can do whatever is needed, because the QR codes do a great job of giving you very detailed information with no typos. If you've ever had to type in a complex, long website URL on your own, you know that it's very easy to make typos 3 or 4 times before you get it right. And one of the purposes of QR codes is so the creator, such as myself, can get it right the first time and then hand it to you so that you don't have to make any typos. For that matter, just scanning a QR code is a lot faster than typing in the first place. Okay, having said that, let me check to see if I'm allowed to share stuff now. I am. That's good. Okay, so I need to start my presentation, and I will, what you're going to see when I actually share the screen is a black screen. Don't worry about that, that's intended, but it won't take you long to get into something that is useful and informative. Okay. Now I have to go back to the Zoom meeting and I have to share my screen. Here comes that black screen, folks. Don't panic. There it is. Now I'm going to adjust a couple of things here that normally would block your view of my slides. One of them is the video panel. I've just gotten rid of that. And the other one is the floating meeting controls. So I'm going to get rid of that as well. Let's see here. There we go. All right. So I mentioned this presentation contains QR codes. There's lots of different things that QR codes can do for you. You're seeing an example of one here, just in case you have never, ever seen a QR code before. There's an example. Now, as I mentioned, you can access the info immediately simply by using your phone or tablet to scan the QR code. In other words, you point the app you're using, which is in most of you, it'll be the camera app in your device, and it'll recognize the QR code. It'll scan the code, which basically means retrieve the information that's built into it. And also, it means you don't have to type and you don't have to suffer typos. So the longer the information inside that QR code, such as a long URL, for instance, the greater the advantage of QR code scanning over typing. Now, as it happens, if you have a recent Android phone running Android 10 or 11 or 12, or an Apple device running iOS 11 through 15, you can actually configure that device to scan the QR codes using the camera app. It's very easy. We're going to run through that briefly. For those of you who are using a device with an earlier operating system, there is an app I'm going to tell you about that you can download today in order to scan the QR codes in this presentation. So get out your phone or tablet if you have it available, and I'm going to give you a QR code to scan after we run through a couple of things. One is, I recognize, I found this out yesterday when I provided the same information at my own user group, that not everybody knows what operating system is on their phone. So we will do a couple of things before we get to that QR code scanning. First of all, we're going to find out what version of the operating system is used on your phone or tablet. And second, we'll find out how to make sure that your phone or tablet camera app is configured to scan QR codes. Because I found out that in at least one case, an officer of the APCUG organization, he had a later version of the phone I own, and his would not scan using the camera app. So that's when I researched it and found out there's a way to turn that off and on. And you're going to turn it on today. I'll show you how. First of all, let's find out what your device operating system version is. Now, here's how you do it on Android. Open the Settings app. You click on About Phone, or if it's a tablet, it'll say About Tablet. And then Software Information. And on the software information screen, find the words Android version. And to the right of that, you'll see a number. And the magic version number is 10, meaning if you see 10 or 11 or 12, then your camera app can be configured to scan QR codes. They did not, the Android folks did not build it in until version 10. Now for Apple, you go to Settings, open the Settings app, go to your name, and then under your name, device name. There, you may see more than one iPhone or iPad listed on that page. You have to tap the name of the device you're going to use for QR code scanning. Once you do that, in that page, find the word version, and your magic number is 11, meaning if it's 11 or higher, then your camera app can be configured to scan QR codes. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is address those of you who have just found out by checking your OS version that your OS version is earlier than Android 10 or earlier than iOS 11. We're going to talk about what you can do. So, for Android, if your version number is less than 10, open your Play Store on your device. There's a search field at the top of the Play Store. In that search field, type the word QRBOT, pronounced QRBot. Type that word in and then tap the search button that appears on your virtual keyboard on your device. The search results show this app. It's called QRBot, QR and Barcode Reader, published by an organization called TCAPS. And there's an install button on the right, big green button. Tap that install button. And once it's installed, you can tap open to start the QRBot app. It has a few intro screens. You just scroll through them. And when you see this button, the blue button that says scan using the camera, stop. And we'll get back to you because at that point, you're all ready to start scanning stuff, but we aren't yet. So, because I have to go through a few other slides for other folks. Now, if you're using an earlier version of iOS on your Apple device, your iPad or your iPhone, here's what you do. First of all, you open the App Store. And if the top of the screen does not display the search field, then tap the search icon in the lower right corner of the screen. And that'll bring up a search field at the top of the screen. In that search field, you type the same thing, QRBOT. And when you do that, you're going to see several results because it turns out the app on the App Store has changed its name. This is a very odd situation that I don't fully understand. But what I want you to do is find this version that I've depicted here for you, scroll through the search results to find it, and it's going to have a green rounded square around the QR code, and it says QR code and barcode scanner. And once you find that one, you tap the install button, which I've circled for you here on the screen, in order to install the app. Now, the real odd part about this is when you find the app on your phone, its name is QRBot. That's same search term that you typed in. Why they changed the name so that it's harder to identify the app? Because frankly, there's a dozen other apps that have roughly the same name in the App Store. Why they changed it away from QRBot, I don't know, because on your phone, the icon for the app is, again, named QRBot. Once you find that on your phone after you install it, advance through the intro screens and stop at the request for permission to use the camera. Halt right there because you are one step away from being ready to scan. Now, at that point, I'm going to ask you to wait patiently because I have to talk to everybody else now. So I put in a slide that says, please wait patiently. All right, now, for Android 10, 11, and 12 folks, It's very easy to check your camera app configuration. First of all, you open the camera app. What I've depicted here is a shot of my I voted sticker from last November. But the important part is the border, the top of the screen where you see icons on a black background. Take a look at that. You need to tap the gear icon in the left corner. I circled it here for you so you can recognize it. And when you do that, the camera settings screen opens like what you see here. On the camera settings screen, you don't have to go down very far to find a switch that says scan QR codes. Make sure that switch is turned on. That's important. You have to make sure that switch is turned on. This is the little magic thing that the officer from APCUG didn't know about, and now you know about it. So you're ahead in the game. Turn that switch on, then you can tap the left arrow in the upper left corner, which I circled here for you, to return to the camera app main screen. And that's all you have to do to make sure you're ready to scan QR codes with the camera app. And by the way, when we scan them, you don't even have to tap the shutter button. It'll just do it automatically. Now, iOS. Open the settings app. iOS puts the settings controls for all of its apps inside the settings app. So when you open that screen, you need to scroll down to find the camera. However, it's easier to do it using the search field in the settings app. If you don't see the search field at the top of the settings app, scroll this scroll the screen down slightly and then back up. And that'll make the search field appear just like what I've shown you here. I circled it. And you can guess what you're going to type. In the search field in settings, type the word camera. And you don't have to tap an enter key or anything like that. It'll start showing you search results immediately. In the search results, the camera icon actually appears twice. Once beside the word camera and once beside the word privacy. Do not tap the word privacy. What you want to do is tap the camera app and its icon. And when you do that, the camera app settings screen opens, and I've captured it here. You can see it. I hope you're seeing the same thing on your Apple device. And wouldn't you know it, one of my apps on my computer decided to pop up an ad, so I'll get rid of that. Now, the next step, once you can see the settings screen, you find the switch labeled Scan QR Codes, and you make sure that switch is turned on. That's very important. Once it's on, you can close the settings app. Okay, now, the next step I call prepare. So for the folks who are using Android 10 or 11 and 12, your camera app should be ready to take a photo. For Android QR bot users, you tap the button labeled Scan using the camera, that blue button that we talked about earlier. For those of you who are using Apple 11 through 15, iOS 11 through 15, just open the camera app. That's all you have to do. And finally, QR bot users for earlier Apple devices, tap OK to grant permission to access the camera. That will start the app, and it will use the camera at this point. Now, in a moment, I'm about to show you that same QR code so you can scan it. There it is. And this contains the URL of my home user group, the Potomac Area Technology and Computer Society, abbreviated PATACES. It's www.pataces.org, PATACS.org. You don't need to type that in, just scan the QR code. Point the camera at the QR code. The app you're using will recognize the QR code, and I'm going to show you what it will do when it recognizes that QR code. And here it is. Now on the left, for Android users of the QR Bot app, it will pop up a screen that includes this circled phrase open website. Just click on that. It will open your web browser and display that web page. So for Android camera users, it'll put up a pop-up near the bottom of the screen, and it includes the circled phrase web address. If you tap that, it will open your web browser and display the web page. For Apple devices using the QR Bot app, it will open a separate screen that displays the website URL at the top. Tap that URL and it will open the website in the Safari web browser. And finally, for Apple camera users, it will display a somewhat low contrast note at the very top of the camera screen that says website QR code, and you can tap that and it will open the website in Safari. So that's an introduction to how you can use your phone or tablet to scan a QR code and use the information that's inside of it. I used a short website URL in this example, but there are many others out there that are quite long. Some of you, I am sure, are very familiar with how difficult it is to type in those URLs. So just imagine how easy it would be if you were also given a QR code to scan. There are other types of QR codes. I should mention these. Some of these would be very useful for user group management. Let me give you an example. One type is called a vCard, and what that is the contents of a contacts record. And when you scan a vCard QR code, the contacts record contained in it will be inserted as a new record in your contacts app. Now for user groups, that's very useful for giving people the address at which your group meets. An email, and in email QR code, you will find a recipient address already filled in, a subject line already filled in, and text body. And you can edit any of that because it's going to open that email in your email app so that you can edit it and send it. And that's useful if people, if you want to have people send you an email asking for an invitation to your user group meetings. Finally, a Wi-Fi login. And this includes Wi-Fi name and password. If you have a long password on your Wi-Fi, then the Wi-Fi login QR code will contain that password so people don't have to type it. They just have to scan the QR code, and using Android or Apple devices, that will connect your device to that Wi-Fi. My daughter, well, I mentioned this to my daughter who lives on the Fort Benning base in Georgia with her husband, who's a first lieutenant. And she said her friends have literally taken the Wi-Fi QR code for their own home Wi-Fi and crocheted it and hung it up on the wall. I thought that was pretty cool. People walk in and can see that on the wall and scan it. Of course, it's easier to print it, but you know, some people have that skill, so that's what they do. There's many other types also. These are three of the most common, other than the type that you've just tried, which has the URL for a web page in it. Now, we're going to get into the main subject. I just want to mention that I originally presented this last year, sometime around the middle of the year, and I have since updated it for Android 12 and iOS 15. I also added a couple of new ideas using a tile button as a way to force your phone to make a sound, and also digital watches such as the Apple Watch or the Samsung Watch or Fitbit often include a way to force your phone to make a sound by touching the watch. So we've added that, and we'll talk about what those mean and what their limitations are. So here we go. Ever lost your smartphone? Well, we're going to talk about ways to secure your phone and to help Good Samaritans return it to you. And this is why you should care about this topic. You probably are aware that your portable device is very expensive. It's difficult to replace. Your device contains vital info, including financial accounts in many cases. Mine certainly does. So I have apps that enable credit card and debit card use, such as Samsung Pay and Google Pay, and even send instructions to my bank and my stock brokerage. Now, I certainly don't want a bad apple to use any of those apps. For many of us, it is also the center of life's important connections to family, as well as ID and passwords for bank accounts and other accounts. My own phone now has an encrypted database that contains over 125 account records, IDs and passwords for just about everything I am currently connected to. Certainly your contacts are extremely valuable because it makes it easier to dial up the friends and family and the doctor and so forth. So because of all of this, it makes sense to protect your resources, your contacts, your accounts, and as well as the effort you put in to centralize all of that info. So because of that, we're going to talk about 4 scenarios this afternoon. The first scenario is you have misplaced your device. It's somewhere where you live, maybe or in your car, and we're going to learn ways to find it. Second, your device really is outside of your control. You left it at a store, you left it at the doctor, whatever. You can learn how to help a Good Samaritan contact you and maybe arrange to get your phone returned. The third scenario, the unhappy one, your device has been stolen by a bad apple. So we're going to learn how to prevent access to your phone. That's very important too. Maybe inconvenient for you, but it's vital if somebody has stolen your phone because you can prevent them from getting into it. And finally, the police have recovered your phone. So we're going to talk about learning how to prove that the phone belongs to you. The police are not quite the same thing as a Good Samaritan because they owe their duty to the public at large, and that means they don't want to return the phone to somebody who really doesn't own it. So we're going to have to learn how to prove that the phone belongs to you. All right, first scenario, misplaced phone. Still somewhere that you control. There's basically 3 ways to find a misplaced phone. And by golly, I should have started up these web pages for the phone maps before I started the presentation, but I'll get there. For both Android and Apple phones, there is a map on the web that will let you determine where your device is located. It's not precise enough to tell you which room of your house it's in, but it can tell you whether it's in your house or your car in front of your house. And in that map, there is a capability to make the misplaced phone or tablet produce a sound. In fact, it'll produce a sound even if you put your device on vibrate mode or silent mode. However, you do have to prepare to make this work. And that means you have to turn on location services on your phone. And you also have to tell your phone specifically to allow the web map to show its location to you. And to get to that web map, you have to sign in to the website using either your Apple ID for Apple devices or your Google ID for Android devices. Method 2 is the traditional one. To make the phone make a sound, call it from another phone. It's easy if you have another phone. It's not so easy if you don't. And we're going to mention a way to make that possible at no cost, actually. Finally, here's an example of a device for finding your stuff. It's called a tile, and I have these attached to my cameras. I have these attached to my backpacks and my luggage. And the idea behind Tile is you can download a free app for finding your stuff, and it will keep track of where it has last been in touch with each of your Tile devices. It stays in touch through Bluetooth. The Tile has a button on it. You can see in the circle the word Tile. That is a button. And you can double tap the button on a Tile to make your phone make a sound. It works only if the Tile is within Bluetooth range of the phone. So this is not as useful as using the web map, because the web map works over the cellular phone network, Wi-Fi. It's very, very usable for making your phone sound, make a sound at a considerable distance. Some watches also provide a method like Tile to have your phone make a sound. But again, that also works only if the phone is within Bluetooth range of the watch. All right, so probably the thing that most of you have not tried before is using a map on the web to locate your smartphone. And the web, as I mentioned, doesn't give you very fine location detail, but it, in my case, fairly often I accidentally drop my phone under the seat of my car. And so when I park my car out front and use the map, it shows me it's in the car. And then I go out there and force it to make a sound. And the sound goes on for 5 minutes, by the way. So if it takes a couple of minutes after you trigger the sound on the web map and walk outside, that it's still plenty of time to find the phone. As I mentioned earlier, to make this work, you have to enable location services on your phone. That means that the phone uses the radio signals from Global Positioning System, GPS, satellites, to keep track of where it's located. There is, however, a privacy issue, because for Android devices, all that information goes through Google, and for Apple devices, all that information about where your phone is goes through Apple. And I have absolutely no doubt that those companies do track where your phone is located so that they can tailor ads to places for you, to places where you have visited. So that's a trade-off. You have to decide if the advantage of finding your phone outweighs the risk of one of those companies tracking the phone. I have location services turned on all the time. I do that for a couple of reasons, but I think that it's worth it in my case. You can make the decision for yourself. Now, let's talk about how to enable your Android phone so that you can find it using a web map. There's 2 steps. The first step is to enable location services, and it's very easy. You open the Settings app. There's a heading in Settings called Location. You tap that, and in the location screen, the very first thing at the top is the switch where you turn location services on or off. So you want to turn it on in order to use the web map. I've circled the switch here so you can see it. All right, there's another part of Settings that you use to tell the web map that you want to be found. And here's how you do it. You go to Settings. In Settings, you tap on Biometrics and Security. And on that page, you tap Find My Device. And in the Find My Device page, the very first thing at the top is a button that you use to turn Find My Device on or off. So you want to turn it on. So those are the 2 steps to enable your phone or tablet to be found on a web map. And here is the URL for the web map for Android phones and tablets. Not a terribly long website. You can take a picture of it if you don't want to scan the QR code. But I did provide the QR code as well. Okay, now, what I have to do is go to Firefox and start up that web map. So I'm going to do that now. And one of the things I should mention, oh, I see I've blocked the shared screen, haven't I? Okay, so what I'm going to do is halt the screen share for a moment. There we go. And I'm going to get this web map ready so I can show it to you. All right, it's asking me to log in, so I'll do that. I gotta get into my database to remember the password. Let's see here. Okay. All right, so let's go down here to my Google passwords. Let's see here. There it is. And okay. Let's try this. There we go. Okay, so I've got the map on the screen. What I'm going to do is share it with you. And there it is. Okay, so when I started it up, because I have more than one Android device, it happened to choose a different one for me to find. It chose my Galaxy Tab S5e, but you can see up here at the upper left under the phrase Google Find My Device, there are 4 other icons. I'm going to tap this one here, and that is my current phone, the Galaxy S10. So what I'm going to do now is have it play a sound. And so you can hear when I push this button that says play sound, it will make a sound so I can find it. Can you hear that? All right, that's my default ringtone. I hope you were able to hear it. That's from an old German rock band from the 1970s. So it turns out you have 2 other options in the map for any device that is not currently in your hands. One is you can secure the device, and 2, you can erase the device, which I call the nuclear option. To put it mildly, I don't recommend that one. We will talk more about those later on in the presentation. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is switch back to the slides. And let's see here. Have the presentation. No, that's not it. All right, I'm not quite sure what I think I may have to resume the slide deck before I can switch back. Let's see here. No, it's running. Okay. So back here and figure out which screen I have to tap. There it is. Okay. All right. I hope one of you can unmute and tell me that you can now see the presentation again.
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you very much. Okay. So you just heard my default ringtone doing exactly what I mentioned here in the slide. And I think that's pretty handy, particularly if, as my phone was at the time, set to silent. All right, so we've just done the demo. And now we're going to talk about iPhone. First of all, here's how you configure your iPhone or iPad to find it on a web map. There are 2 steps, just like there were for Android. First of all, you go to open your settings app, you tap on privacy, and then you tap on location services. And in order to turn on location services, you use a switch at the very top. Make sure that switch is turned on. I've circled it here for you in the screen capture that you see. In addition, you have to tell the phone to allow use of a web map to find your phone. And here's how you turn that on. In the settings app, you tap on your name, you tap on Find My, and then you tap on Find My iPhone. And at the top of that screen, there's a switch labeled Find My iPhone. I've circled that switch here in the second screen capture. You turn that on, and that's it. You're done at that point. That accomplishes exactly what you need. Okay, so here's the login or the web page for finding your iPhone or iPad. Is iCloud.com/find. You do have to log in, again, just like we did for Android, which means I need to get my database going so I can find my Apple ID. Well, let's see here. There it is. Okay. Actually, I think I remembered that password. So I'm going to go back to the browser and start a new web page for accessing iCloud. There's actually a www in front of that iCloud.com. Okay. Not that many O's. There we go. We type that in. It asks for the password. Lucky me, you don't get to see it. And let's see if I typed it correctly. Yeah, I ran into this the other day. You may know that Ken also asked me to present this at the Columbus Computer Society, which I did, but it seemed like iCloud Find was running a little slow at the time. This is finding my iCloud, excuse me, my iPhone X. I also have an iPhone 5. So I can click on all devices and it'll either find all of them for me, and they're both here in my house, so it has done that. Or I can just specify I want it to find my iPhone 10. When you specify a particular device, in the upper left corner below iCloud Find My Phone, you will see the device with options to play sound, lost mode, and erase phone. Lost mode is very similar to the secure phone option in the Android system. But for now, I'm going to click on play sound. It actually took about 5 minutes to force my phone to play a sound when I did this for the Columbus Computer Society the other day. So let's see how long it takes this time. Here comes the click. Yeah, there you go. It worked immediately. Can you hear that?
Yes, we can hear it.
Okay, that's what the find notification sounds like when it sends that message to your phone. All right, just tap the power button and that stops the sound. Okay, we'll talk about those other two options, lost mode and erase phone, later on in the presentation. So now I'm going to switch back to the presentation. Let's see here. There we go. The map displays the last known locale of the device and gives you that option to play that sound. So we've done the demo. Now we're going to talk about the Good Samaritan scenario. Let me go ahead and hide the floating meeting controls again. There we go. One thing, if you have a printer or if your handwriting is very neat, you can put a physical label bearing contact information on your phone or on its case. There's another way to convey the same information, and it's the one I've used. You can put contact information on your phone's lock screen, and that is what is displayed when people find a phone and hit the power button. It doesn't allow them to enter the phone if you use the lock screen as intended, but it does provide an opportunity for the Good Samaritan to see, for instance, your alternative phone number or your email address or both. And I'm going to show you how to put that on a lock screen. I call it an annotated lock screen. You start with the photo that you like, and then you put words on it. And then you choose it as the lock screen. We're going to work through every one of those steps. The info on the lock screen is in some sense a limited time offer because, of course, the phone battery will run out eventually. For most of us, if it's not actually being actively used, that eventually is a few days in the future. The Good Samaritan might also be able to recharge the phone and see the lock screen. So here's an example of a lock screen that I use on my Android phone. This is a photo of the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds team that I shot a few years ago at an air show. And I decided to put some text on it, including my alternative phone number and my email address. I'm not showing those to you here, but this is an example of what you can do with a simple app. I use this one for Android. It's called Add Text. Here you can see the icon, and it's published by Gabo Apps. If you have an Android phone and you are able to scan this QR code, you can scan this QR code right now. It will open the Play Store and display the page from which you can download this app. I'm not going to show you how to use the app today. There's a limit to the amount of time we have. But we are going to talk about, once you have created the annotated photo, the photo with words on it, then you can set it as lock screen wallpaper. And here we go. You find it using the Google Photos app. There's the icon for the Photos app. So you go into the Photos app and you find and display the annotated photo, and it'll look like this. Then you tap the three-dot icon in the upper right corner. I circled it for you here so you can see it. A pop-up appears. It covers most of the screen. The part you need in the pop-up is at the very top. You see those small icons across the top. You're going to scroll to the right and find an icon that says Use As. Here I've circled it for you so you can see it. You tap that, and a second pop-up appears at the bottom. And here you tap the word Wallpapers, and I've circled that for you as well. When you do that, your screen will once again display the annotated photo that you have chosen. And at the bottom, there's a button that is labeled Set on Lock Screen. Now, I have circled that for you. Sometimes there will be a second button. If you have not also set a home screen wallpaper, that button may show up as well. But the one you want for purposes of the lock screen is, of course, the button that says set on lock screen. So when you tap that, that's your last step. That annotated photo will become your lock screen, the thing you see when you turn on power on your phone. Okay, now we're going to look at how we do that for Android. Excuse me, Apple, iOS. My goodness. Here's an example of an iPhone lock screen. This is a picture of a 4-story tall Ferris wheel on the Potomac River, just south of the Beltway around Washington, D.C. And what's unusual about this one is it is lit entirely by LEDs. It has approximately 16 million LEDs on the Ferris wheel. This is a photo I shot of it a couple of years ago. Again, this photo is annotated. I put my alternative phone number and my email address on the screen so a good Samaritan who finds the phone could return it to me. So I put that on using a free iPhone app named Typorama. That's the clever name. It's published by App Business Ventures LLC. It's on the App Store. Here's its icon. And once again, I've given you a QR code that you can scan if you want to obtain the app right now. Scanning this will cause your App Store to open to the page on which Typorama is described, and you can install the app from that. Just by the way, if you're not prepared to do any of this today, I'm going to send your user group a PDF copy of this. All of the URLs in the PDF copy will be live, so that you can use them when you have the PDF on your screen. Now, once you've created the annotated photo, here's how to set that as lock screen wallpaper on your iPhone or iPad. You open the Photos app. Here's the icon, probably familiar to most of you. It's one thing that these smartphones have done for Western culture is taught everybody to be a photographer. You find and display the annotated photo. So it'll appear on your screen like I've shown you here using the Photos app. And then you tap the share icon. It's in the lower left corner. I've circled it there for you. I also sort of made a copy of it next to the word share icon here. Tap that, and here's what happens. You'll see a pop-up that looks like this, and it basically covers the entire screen. You scroll down to find and tap the choice that I circled for you called Use as Wallpaper. Tap that. The photo is displayed again with a Set button in the bottom right corner. So you tap that Set button, and you get a choice of setting it as a lock screen or as a home screen or both. Or if you've chosen the wrong photo, just cancel. But in this case, the right photo is chosen, so we tap Set Lock Screen, and that's it. That's all it takes. Okay, now we're going to talk about modern options for your alternative phone number and for your email address. You could specify your residential landline if you still have one. Many people don't. If you still work, you can specify an office desk phone. You can specify another smartphone if you have two, or if you live with a spouse or somebody else who's cooperative enough to allow their phone number to be placed as your alternative phone number. Now, here's, since back when I was working, I had a company iPhone and I had my Android phone. And so on each of them, I used the other one's phone number as the contact phone number on the lock screen. I don't have that company smartphone anymore since I retired. So what I did was create a free line on Google Voice, voice.google.com. They will allow you to obtain a free phone number that will ring using the Google Voice application, or you can access voice.google.com and sign in, and it will ring on your computer. So as long as you have speakers on your computer and a microphone on your computer, which all of you do since you're participating in the Zoom meeting, you can access your Google Voice line and either check for voicemails or answer a ringing Google Voice line, or call back somebody who's left you a voicemail. You can do all of that using your computer, and that makes the Google Voice line very convenient. It happens that since my iPhone 10 is retired and I don't have it connected to a phone service, I put the Google Voice line on my iPhone 10, and I can literally use that Voice line app to dial my Android phone when my Android phone is missing. Google Voice is something you ought to seriously consider if you don't have an alternative phone line. It's very convenient, and it's free. There's the QR code for voice.google.com. If you care to get that into your web browser immediately, you can scan that. There's also a couple of places, well, there's more than a couple, but there's a couple of big places that still offer free emails, free email accounts. And what I recommend is that you create an email account name that does not include your name. Keep it anonymous. And you can do that on Yahoo through mail.yahoo.com. You can also do that on Gmail through mail.google.com. AOL still offers free email accounts. I saw the other day that I ran into somebody who's using a Hotmail account, so those still exist. So there's lots of possibilities to create an email account name that does not include your name, and then you can use that for people to contact you when they find your phone. So that's another way to create an email that you can put on the lock screen. All right, so we pretty much exhausted supporting the Good Samaritan. Now we're going to talk about a somewhat less comfortable topic, the bad apple scenario. An important thing to ask yourself is, why does the bad apple want to steal your smartphone? This is something that that is a bit of an underground industry in the Washington, D.C. area, since so many people from other countries come here and often fall on hard times. Sometimes, essentially, the thief is renting out your phone to allow people to place calls, often to other countries. And because it belongs to you, those calls to other countries, which can be very expensive, are billed to you. Now, if you leave your phone unsecured and you have bank and stock brokerage apps configured with your account information, the thief can also access your bank and stock brokerage accounts. It's a little less common, but it's still a well-known fact that a lot of IRS refunds have been hijacked by people pretending to be who they are not. And some of the information on your phone may assist that. So, for instance, if you have your social security number on your phone or your date of birth, they could ransom the phone back to you. They could sell the phone to someone else. There's lots of reasons. So for all of those, your lock screen is your first line of defense. And I don't mean just putting words on your lock screen, but actually using it to prevent access to your phone. And you can secure that lock screen using a passcode, your face, or your fingerprint, if you wish. The newly released iOS 15.4 now even allows the phone to identify your face when you have a mask on, as in a COVID mask. You can control how the phone identifies you for unlocking the phone. It can be any one of those. And in fact, there's a few others that are less secure on the Android side. We'll go through on the Android side. We'll go through all of them for both Android and iPhone. And here we start with Android 11 and 12. This is a screen that you reach by opening the settings app, tapping on lock screen, and then screen lock type. What you're seeing on the right is the screen lock type screen, and it has several options. In order to get to this point, if you've already created a password for getting past your lock screen, you're going to have to type that in again to get to this screen. The unlocking options are none, swipe, which allows you to create a complex pattern of finger movements around the screen, or a simple pattern for that matter. Swipe is not what I described. Swipe is simply move your finger up or down, left or right on the screen. Pattern is where you create a pattern which you must repeat in order to access the screen. PIN means creating a numeric password. Password, which is much more secure, means you can use letters and numbers, which is what I do. And then it also allows on phones that have front selfie cameras, it'll allow facial recognition. And on phones that have built-in fingerprint scanning capability, you can choose fingerprints as an alternative. I talked about what pattern means. All right, let's look at iOS and see what it provides for us. Open the Settings app. You tap in the Settings app main screen, tap Face ID and Passcode, and you get to the screen depicted on the right. Ideally, I recommend using a passcode. Passcode is numeric at this time. You can create a 6-digit numeric passcode. You can set a record. You can also record your face and use that instead of your numeric passcode. And on that same Face ID and passcode screen, if you scroll down to the bottom, you're going to see a number of things that a user of the phone can do with the phone when the lock screen is locked. And I strongly recommend you turn off all of those, particularly Wallet. That's really bad to leave active when your screen is locked. But I think the most prudent thing to do is disable every one of them, turn all the switches off. All right, another thing that's valuable is to back up your data. And for Android, when I looked at the App Store, I found various apps exist. Excuse me, it's the Google Play Store. I found various apps exist on the Play Store for backing up your contacts, and that's probably the most vital thing to back up. I use an account management app called Keeper Security for backing up my account info, and it backs up not to my computer, but to a server farm called the Keeper Security Cloud. And that I have found has been extremely valuable. I've used it across 3 different phones. And when I buy a new phone, I can reload the account info from the Keeper Security Cloud when I install the Keeper Security app on my new phone. It's also available using the Keeper Security website. You log into that and you can also access all of your information. For iOS 15, you already have a very valuable backup capability built in. It's called, you can back up to your computer using iTunes, and you can back up to Apple's server farm called iCloud also. Here's how you enable it. Open the Settings app, click your name, and click iCloud. It may ask you to log in. I can't recall offhand. I did that several months ago, but The important thing to do is get in there and make sure that you're being backed up regularly to iCloud. That way, if your phone is lost and destroyed, then you have access to your data. Now, let's go back to those websites that I demonstrated earlier. There's some other options that I mentioned on those websites if you determine with high confidence that a bad apple has your phone. First of all, before I discuss these in detail, let me mention, I suggest you call the police and let them know where your phone is. It's not clear to me that the police are going to do anything about it because, frankly, in some jurisdictions, they get those calls many times a day, and there's just not enough police hours in the day to investigate all of them. But for you personally, you can also, using the map, secure the device. Now, what that does is make it impossible to get in without using your Google ID to open it. So it literally disables whatever you have already established for screen lock. Now, I put an asterisk by this option called erase device because that's when you determine that maybe you know your device has been opened somehow. You want to make sure that everything on it is erased. And that, among other things, turns off location services, which is a bad news because you can't track your phone anymore. You see, I put an asterisk there, and I will reiterate what I said earlier about that option. For Apple, we have a choice similar to secure device for Android. It's called lost mode, and it locks the phone. It leaves it otherwise available with location services turned on so you can continue tracking the phone. And it does require you to enter your Apple ID to unlock it. And that means the ID and the password. So you have to remember those things. Also, it allows you to erase your phone. Now, I put an asterisk here because I used a phrase earlier and I want to reiterate it. Erasing your phone is the nuclear option. You're kissing it goodbye. You're not going to be able to find it again. Location services are turned off. I don't recommend it. That's just the way to say it. You have to be at wit's end at that point. Also, ask yourself this: should you ask your company to disable the phone, meaning your phone company, such as AT&T or Verizon Wireless or T-Mobile? And the gist of my answer is maybe. Let's talk about it. Doing so, getting the phone disabled will definitely prevent the bad apple from using the phone to place calls. Now, if you have a lock screen in place with appropriate security, then they probably won't be able to get in the first place. But if you haven't done that, and you've definitely determined that your phone is somewhere it should not be, it's probably been stolen, and disabling the phone is probably a good idea. But it eliminates all the options found on the web map for finding the phone. You won't be able to track it anymore. So it's pretty much as bad as the nuclear option. I would think securing your device, locking your phone is probably a better idea than these. However, the company may also be able to block placement of overseas calls. That depends on the company. You have to ask the company if you can do that. Okay, that's pretty much it for the bad apple. Now let's talk about the police. How does the phone end up in the hands of the police? Sometimes Good Samaritans have limits on what they're willing to do. And so instead of calling you or sending you an email, they'll just hand it over to the police. Also, the police may have recovered the phone during an arrest or a criminal investigation. And that makes life a little more complicated. As I said earlier, think of the police as skeptical Good Samaritans. They're not going to hand it to you until they're convinced it's yours and not somebody else's. So first of all, they're going to ask a proof of who you are, such as a driver's license. And keep in mind, even after they're convinced that you are who you are and that it belongs to you, they still may need to retain the phone as evidence. Because of the evidence need, it is a very good idea to keep a retired phone that you can charge up and activate by calling your phone company. And that way, you're not losing the use of your phone while it's being held for who knows how many weeks by the police. Now, if a Good Samaritan handed it to them, that business of holding on to it as evidence doesn't get involved. But if it comes to them through some other method, like I said, an arrest or a criminal investigation, they may need to hold on to it. All right, so here are the things that you can do now so that you're prepared to prove that the phone is in your hands. One, you have the password to open the lock screen. Two, you know names that are in the contacts list. I probably could not recite all of them, but I can recite maybe 20% of them pretty quickly. You have the account ID to display the location of the phone on the MAP website, and it'll show it in the police station. You can use the web map also to force the phone to play a sound. You can dial your phone number from, say, a desk phone at the police station, and the phone will ring. And this is a good one that not many people think of. You have a record of the phone's serial number, and I'm going to show you exactly how to find it. On Android 11 and 12, this is how you find your device's serial number. You open the Settings app, tap on About Phone, and about the fourth item down, the serial number will appear. I circled that for you. You don't need my serial number, so that's why I blocked it out. For iOS 15, you go to Settings, open the Settings app, tap on the word General, and tap on the word About. And you can see here that your serial number is the fourth item down. Just I've circled it for you as well. Very easy to find. When you find it, I suggest you do a screen capture, and that saves the image of that screen in your phone's photos. And then from there, make a copy of that photo onto your computer, so you have it backed up just in case you need to know the serial number at a later date. Okay, that concludes the presentation, but I want to mention one other little thing related to phones. Those of you who are using the Verizon wireless service as your carrier need to know that there's a new monitoring policy that Verizon Wireless has been rolling out to all of its customers, and it has, what, 15 million customers. For me, it showed up in early January of this year. Verizon sent me an email introducing a new policy that, get this, it tracks all your uses of apps and web pages on your Verizon Wireless phones and tablets. All. Emphasize, all. That's a huge monitoring task. Earlier the same day, my daughter had sent me a text indicating that she read about this in Wired magazine. The policy is imposed by default. It's not like you can say, no, I decline. But there is a way you can opt out. I will say that Verizon Wireless claims the benefit for you is to more precisely customize, they use this word, offers. We know what that means. It means ads from Verizon Wireless and third parties. They do not sell your personal information, but they do provide a way for you to opt out of this. The way that third party ads get to you is that Verizon says, for instance, to a third party who owns a website, 2.7 million Verizon Wireless customers used your website in the past 2 months. Here's how much we'll charge you for us to send your ad to those 2.7 million customers. As I say, there's ways to opt out. The Wired magazine article does an okay, not outstanding job of explaining how to do so. Here's the URL of that article. And you can also scan the QR code to load that article directly into your phone's web browser right now. I wrote an article about, this came out on January 5th for me, and I wrote an article about how to opt out using the My Verizon app that is installed by default on all Verizon wireless phones. I sent that article to APCUG for distribution by the AppCug push service. So your newsletter editor should receive it. I just don't know when it's going to be received. It may have already been received. It may not have. But in any event, if you want to get started right now, you can scan the QR code or type in the URL and learn what they have to say. The difference between their article and mine is I use screen captures to illustrate how to use the My Verizon app to opt out. Okay, at this point, I'm going to mention my next public presentation, which is a week from yesterday. And AppCug decided to do a Saturday Safari as sort of a hands-on lab for digital video editing. We're going to use an app called, an application for computers called Vegas Movie Studio. And I will be showing you step by step how to edit files that we're going to give you in advance, video files. The idea is that you download and install a free copy of Vegas Movie Studio. This will start at 12 noon Eastern Time on Saturday, March 26th. You do have to register in advance. Here's the URL for that, and you know what happens when I display a URL for you. I give you a QR code. There's a deadline for registering. You have to register by 11:30 p.m. on Friday, March 25th. It's also your responsibility to install Vegas Movie Studio 2022, the latest version. A 30-day free trial is available. And that's the URL for the Windows free trial. I believe there's a Mac free trial also. I haven't had a chance to catch my breath, so I haven't looked up where the Mac version is. I think what actually happens is when you go to that site, it uses the web browser you're running to figure out what your operating system is, and then it offers you the free trial for the version for your operating system. So you can get that. If you don't want to spend any money, you can get your feet wet on Saturday and decide whether or not you want to hold the software and use it for more than 30 days. I think this is very valuable for any video that you shoot with your phone, because it'll allow you to edit the bad parts out and keep the good parts together. For that matter, if your children are constantly sending a barrage of videos or even posting them on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, you can download those and put them together in a creative file and then surprise your kids with it. So that's it. I'm going to kill the presentation here. I've given you a lot to chew on, and I hope you'll have some questions for me. So let's move on to that stage of today's event.
Don't forget, everybody's muted, so unmute yourselves if you have a question. I do have a question about I'm on the website. I have a Mac, vegascreativesoftware.com. There appears to be multiple products, so I'm not sure what's what.
Right. This is the bottom end product. It's called Vegas Movie Studio 2022. They do offer a yearly license that I think is about $33. They do offer a purchase at a one-time payment, which I think is about $59. But Movie Studio has a bunch of what I think of as mid-level features, as well as the basic features that every person needs for editing video. Cut and paste is among the basics. But just to give you an example of what else you can do, this image behind me is a video of flowers, daffodils in my front yard. I think I mentioned I shot with my little $200 camcorder. I shot a video of this last year that was about a minute long. And in Vegas Movie Studio, I put that video in the track. Then I put it a second time, right after the first time, in the track. But that second one, I used an option called reverse. So as you watch this, you're seeing the forward motion, and then you're seeing the reverse of the video. And I think it's just about impossible to tell which is which. But that's a simple way to create a zoom loop. And they use a different way. If you've looked at the built-in zoom loops, for instance, the one of the palm trees on the shore with waves rolling in, that one was done through a different method, and we're going to learn that one too during the event next weekend. So it's the very lowest end product that they offer. But I think for folks who haven't done video editing before, it's just about ideal.
I was waiting to see if there was another really good question, because I wanted to try to be funny with our speaker and tell him that I object to the daffodils, and considering where he lives, why didn't you show me cherry blossoms this time of year?
Well, you know, that's a good question. Hang on a moment. I've got one. Let's see here. How can I choose a different background? I think I have to go to video settings and go to backgrounds and filters. Since I've lived here for so long and I've been an enthusiastic amateur photographer since high school, I have shot a few of those. Let's see here. I don't have them particularly organized, so I'm scanning through these things. Some of them are snow and ice. One of them is from Badlands National Park. There it is. Okay. Now, I'm going to have to move a little bit so you can see this, but that's the reflection of the Washington Monument in the tidal basin. And these are cherry blossoms around the tidal basin, which is just to the south of the hill on which the Washington Monument stands. So there's your cherry blossom photo.
I've never seen anybody do that take on a photograph. That's clever.
Well, you know, there's two things about being a photographer and walking around the cherry blossoms. One is you're constantly looking for something that somebody else hasn't done, because there's so many photographers and so many photos published each year. The second thing you learn very quickly, if you have the words Nikon or Canon visible on your equipment, at least half a dozen Japanese tourists are going to stop you and ask you to take their picture with their camera. So I generally don't go down there before 7 o'clock in the evening because I just don't want to be stopped. I want to be, just concentrating on what can I do that I haven't done before. This isn't the only good one I have, but I think it's the only good one that I've put into my collection of Zoom backgrounds. So
thank you so much.
You're very welcome. I have some other pictures of the Washington Monument. I have a picture when they retired the space shuttles. One of them was brought to Washington to put in the National Air and Space Museum Annex. And when it arrived, it circled Washington, D.C., and I got a shot of it on the back of a 747 directly above the Washington Monument. The other one was one of those unique things. It's only going to happen once. We had, what year was it? I was working downtown. We had a fairly bad earthquake Virginia is unusual because it's the second most active seismic area after California, but the vast majority of the things that can be detected by seismometers in Virginia are like force 2, Richter scale 2. I mean, you can't feel them. The seismometers can detect them, but the rest of us, it just doesn't bother us. The thing that hit us that day was 5.8. And my wife called me on a smartphone. She's in Arlington. I was in DC working. And she said, "We're in an earthquake." And about 5 seconds later, the call cut off because, of course, it disrupted all the phone systems. And that was when it hit us in our Washington, D.C. Office building. We spent the next 4 hours standing around on the outside of the office building. One of the things I learned from that is because it hit my wife first, I knew it came from the South. And sure enough, when the news media was able to report things, it turned out it came from a town in Virginia called Mineral. And if you look at it on a map, it is very close to one of the nuclear reactors in Virginia, one of the power reactors. It didn't knock out the power reactor, and I'm not sure why, but in any event, it was a bad one. Why am I telling you this? Because I have photos of people inspecting the Washington Monument. Now, they didn't start from the ground. There's windows on the top of the Washington Monument. They climbed out through the windows and rappelled down the Washington Monument. And I've got photos of them doing that. Like I said, it's a very unique circumstance. One other thing I didn't get a photo of, when I was in college, I worked for the Park Service as a photo intern, which turned out to be a little bit east of the White House. And when Richard Nixon resigned and got in a helicopter to fly to Andrews Air Force Base, I literally walked out of the dark room, looked up, and the helicopter was passing over my head. No, I didn't shoot that picture. Oh, well, can't get them all. But I admit, it is fun in that sense, growing up here, because you often have a close attachment to things that become history. The bad news about that was that my dad was working on the Hill for his high school buddy, who was a Republican congressman that actually represented our district. And in 1974, he got beat, and he got beat bad, and that was the Watergate reaction. So I was in college. I was in the middle of my first semester of senior year. My mom called me up and said, "Don't worry, your dad has a new job. You can stay in school." And I thought, was there any other question that I might not be able to stay? We only had one semester to pay for. So it was a moment of, terror on my part. So other questions, please. Oh, Gregory, you're using that Zoom loop I was talking about, the one with the palm trees and the waves rolling in. That's pretty cool stuff.
That one is the standard.
Yes.
However, that's just wishful thinking from my youthful living in Florida. I also lived in Falls Church, Virginia, by the way.
Really? My mother's sister lived in Sarasota and then West Palm Beach. So we went down there. I hate to say it. We went down there in the summer times to visit because, the kids were out of school. We could visit my cousins, and it was usually pretty hot. And I remember one scene where one year we were there, and they literally, on my cousin's street, this truck came down the street and was spraying to kill the mosquitoes. It was pretty bad. The place where we stayed was a tiny little mom and pop set of cabanas on Riviera. Excuse me, I think that's it, Riviera Beach. They're all gone. They're replaced with 20-story high-rises.
True.
Because everybody from New York moves to, West Palm Beach. Oh, well.
from Fort Myers, and it is the whole beach area is totally different than I remember.
Yeah, I agree. I was down there. When was I down there? The mid-'80s, Fort Myers. And after a storm, I went out and got a terrific photo of the sunset with clouds all around it in Pine Island. And I've read about looking for seashells down there. I'd sure like to get down there at low tide sometime, particularly after a storm. It's a pretty cool place. One of the odd things about my situation is I've grown up here on the East Coast, covered in trees all the time. I have friends that moved out west, and they tell me when they come back here, they live out there 20 years, they come back here on business or something, they can't stand the trees. They feel claustrophobic. And then there's the humidity. I have gotten so tired of the humidity around here. My son says he's never going to leave the East Coast because he loves the humidity. I don't know what changed in me, but I'm going to move to the desert as soon as I can afford to. That means the stock market has to do pretty well. No chance that that's going to continue forever, but we'll see. Before my daughter lived in Fort Benning, they were stationed in El Paso at Fort Bliss, and I visited them 4 times, I think, and I really enjoyed that area. I thought it was wonderful. Other questions? No? Okay. Well,
Hold on, I think Sheila's trying to say something.
okay. Sheila, speak up.
No, never mind.
Okay.
He's talking to somebody else.
Oh, one of those cheaters. Okay.
No, I've said it was a very good job. I appreciated your information that you shared.
Well, thank you. I was in my user group for about 10 years, starting in 1982. And the kids had gotten old enough that they needed homework help, and I didn't have enough time for it anymore. But after my wife died and my kids moved out, I figured I'll go back and see what the club is doing now. And what I found out is they weren't doing anything like we did in the 80s. They didn't teach people how to do things. They just said this is possible and left people to their own devices to actually figure out how to do things. And I said, I know the industry has been overtaken by that kind of minimalist attitude. And I don't just mean volunteer user groups like yours and ours. When I got the iPhone 10, it came with an app for reading books. And one of the books you could get for free was the iPhone user guide. So I downloaded the iPhone user guide, 1,200 pages, no screen captures, no photos. And I thought, these guys pride themselves on the Mac, and it's what you see is what you get sort of technology. And they didn't include any of that in this 1,200-page manual. So that's just the latest example. I mean, this is something that I thought was a crying need for ever since I got involved again in the user group. So that's what I do. I do tutorials. I use screen captures. I help people find things and use things. And I enjoy it. And that's what user groups are really about, is that each of us has some strengths and some weaknesses. And in the group, we can help each other. I think that's very valuable.
Just a quick comment, the QR utility that you showed us.
Yeah.
One of the most valuable things that I discovered is you can actually resize the window.
And crop out the stuff that you don't need to scan. Yeah.
And what that's going to allow me to do is I've got several hundred phones that have barcodes that I need to scan.
Oh.
And before I was just using a little template. So thank you for pointing me in the direction of that app.
Wow, that's really cool. I had no idea. Yeah, people find all sorts of uses for this stuff. There's even, get this, there's an outdoor game. People place little QR codes around a community, and there's a website where you can find out where they're located, and an app on your phone that'll show you a map of where they're located. The game is called Munzees, Munzees. You scan the QR code that you found, and it gives you some number of points. They keep they also allow you to see on the website where you stand in terms of your point total against everybody else in the world who plays the game. And they keep a list of the top 25,000 point scores. I played it for about 5 weeks, and I got to position 10,400 out of the 2,500, which means I have something close to 150,000 points. Now, having said that, take a look at a map in the Munzee game. Take a look at the map of Washington, D.C. It is jammed with Munzees. And there's a second type of Munzee called a virtual, which only has a location, but all you have to do is get close to that location and push the scan button and you capture it. I captured over 500 virtual Munzees in Washington, D.C. in the space of an hour. And there's other places like that. Falls Church, okay, just west of the corner of 29 and 7. There's maybe 150. So it's, in some ways it was too easy. I've stopped playing it. But it's a fun little thing to do. I have a course called QR Codes and More that, among other things, talks about the PDF code, PDF 417 code that is on the back of your driver's license and how to read that and understand that. I think it's pretty important to understand it because around here, more and more businesses are scanning, rather than just glancing at your age when you're buying alcohol, for instance, they scan that entire PDF 417 code. They're getting a vast amount of information by doing that. You ought to be aware of what they're getting by doing that. And I'll show you exactly how to do that. The other one is a very interesting development. You probably know, since they brought out the vaccines for COVID-19, that the CDC has issued a paper card on which your vaccination record is handwritten. And pretty quickly, there were a fair number of forgeries produced. They got a lot of publicity. Well, guess what? Technology has kicked in and developed a way to develop a forgery-proof vaccination record using dual key encryption in a QR code. It's called the Smart Health Card. It's used, the last time I checked was early January, it was being used by 16 states. I downloaded my Smart Health Card first when I finished my second Moderna vaccination, and second when I got a booster. And it's one of the biggest darn QR codes I've ever seen because it's encrypted. But that encryption allows a free app which verifies these codes for admission to, say, a restaurant or a sporting event. And that can be done in about 2 seconds using the app. So what it does is contact the servers and confirm that it was issued by a valid issuer organization. And second, that it has a valid data inside the QR code. That data is also printed in English on the PDF that I downloaded of my Smart Health Card. And I have that on my phone, actually both of my phones. That's an alternative to the printed card, and it's a lot more secure. Okay, anything else?
Yeah. What's the definition of QR in the QR
Quick
code?
response.
Okay.
Quick response. The quickness is the key. The idea was to encourage businesses, manufacturers, Kellogg's, as an example, to put QR codes on their packaging so that people could learn more about it by accessing a web page. That's really how it caught on. People have been aware of QR codes since The Uniform Product Code, the UPCA that's used for pricing, showed up on products in the, in the stores. That's been around for decades, but the two-dimensional codes like QR are more recent, and they contain a lot more information. I showed you a few, the ones that allow you to access applications, apps for your phone, the URL things for accessing websites. Also, there's one that I have that we used when my next presentation is going to be for my home club. We have a standard program where we allow any member of any other user club to come in through Zoom and view our presentations at our club meetings. And I give you an email QR code which writes the request for the Zoom details into your email app. And all you have to do is fill in your name, your city and state, and which user group you belong to, and then hit the send button. And that gets you the Zoom details from our club. So that's another example of something that's potentially useful to clubs, that kind of email QR code. I teach people how to use code reader apps in my QR codes and more. I'm tempted to put together a second presentation on writing and creating QR codes, in part because the QR codes for Wi-Fi login, almost every app and every website that I've tried gets it wrong. It won't work. The QR code that they generate will not work. And I went through a very, very painful investigatory process to figure out what they were doing wrong and how to fix it. So I'm willing to teach that to people. I think QR codes and more is already an hour long. I don't want to make it any longer. So I guess I'm going to have to do a second presentation. But QR codes, in my opinion, are immensely useful because you don't need the internet in order to scan one and take advantage of the information in it. And
Thank you. I ran across that. I was doing something and it said scan the QR code. I didn't have a clue what it was. I've seen it, but I didn't have a clue what it really meant. So
well, I hope you have a clue now.
Yeah, I did find out what it meant. I looked it up on Google or Wikipedia, and they explained it was quick response. And I read all about it. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. I've become a very very active proponent of QR codes because I think there's too many times that people show you something in a presentation, some URL or some other information, and if you don't think to take a photo of it with your phone or your tablet or do a screen capture on your computer, how are you going to remember it? I mean, it's just almost impossible. So QRs, I think, are a really good alternative, very valuable because you don't even have to take notes. There is, for those of you who use Windows, there is built into Windows, not Zoom, Windows, a feature that you access using the Windows key plus the G key. And it will allow you to make a video recording of any one app, such as Zoom. So if you want to record it on your computer and use it on your computer, you can do that using that feature. And it's pretty darn powerful. I forgot to do it at the beginning of this presentation. I know you all made a recording because I got that warning when I logged in. So I hope you'll be able to, if you did in fact record my presentation, I hope you'll be able to give me access to that recording. But for the rest of us, sometimes you log into something and they will never give you a recording. You can make your own. And that Windows G key combination is the start. You do have, if does involve a recording with you as one of the speaking parties, then there's an option there to turn on your local microphone and include that in the recording. It's not there by default. You have to turn it on. But I think that's useful for so many things. It was the reason it's the G key, because it was originally designed for people playing games and making a recording of how they played the game in case they found some cool way to get around the monster or some cool way to find the Easter egg. But the rest of us can use it too.
Well, I'm the guy that makes those recordings, and I also, they will appear on YouTube in it's LCCS Media or whatever it is.
Oh,
on
you
YouTube.
have a YouTube channel.
Yeah,
That's great. Yeah.
So
Another thing I will mention, for those of you who have co-host status, I don't know if it's, let's see here, does it show up here? It's in the more menu.
Participants window.
Yeah, I know, but there's a more, when I'm hosting a meeting, there's a more menu that shows up, and it allows you have to pre-configure this on Facebook, on YouTube and on Twitch, but there's a more menu that allows you to stream your meeting and record it on YouTube or stream it onto Twitch. Now, Twitch by default does not make a permanent recording. It's just there if, for instance, your license is overrun with people who want to see whatever you're showing. You can set up Twitch as an additional site at which they can watch things and hear, but there they won't be able to chat or ask questions. They can just watch.
yeah, I think I'm familiar with that because the Newark City Council, which I used to video those myself, but they now use that feature using Zoom, but they have to, I think it's a paid thing on YouTube to be able to do that, where it records and archives it at the same time.
I have done it using my Zoom Pro account to my YouTube channel, and I haven't paid a penny to YouTube. So there are ways to accomplish it. I can't tell you offhand because I haven't done it recently. I did that research about 8 months ago.
Okay, I think maybe it is the Zoom Pro. I know they have that Pro version or what are paid for. So
they may actually have gotten some sort of nonprofit license from Zoom that's not available to individuals. But I know, for instance, there's some schools that in the Washington, D.C. region that have a Zoom account that they pay nothing for. And it gives them a huge number of seats and all sorts of other features. The university that hosts our physical meeting site for our user group, it's George Mason University in Fairfax, Virginia. They bought a wacko license that I'd never heard of, and it literally keeps the meeting open 24/7, even if nobody's connected to it. So when you are allowed by the GMU scheduling system to hold your meeting, that guarantees that nobody else is on that permanent meeting during those hours. And you can log in by doing join meeting. There's literally nobody acting as host, which I thought was pretty darn odd. But there are people who can log in as co-host with the separate passcode for hosts for that permanent ongoing meeting. And I had never heard of that before it was explained to me about 2 weeks ago. I thought that was pretty interesting, but they don't announce that on their website. I guess there's some special deal for educational institutions.
Well, we're getting kind of way off the subject here. Now what do you think, Kenneth? Want to do a lead out here?
Yes, and I just want to make sure in chat I put the correct link to our YouTube channel. I looked for your name, Everett, and it's what it looked like it should be.
I see that in chat. Thank you very much.
But are there
Okay.
any other questions that we have for John before we stop the recording? Don't forget
Would
your
you tell,
all.
would you tell John again that we could sit here the rest of the day? He is so interesting to sit and listen. Thank you, thank you.
One of the clubs here in the Washington area that I did a presentation for last month, the guy who invited me called me a live wire. So I asked I asked all the attendees, what do you think? I've never been called a live wire before. It's kind of fun doing this stuff. I enjoy conversing with people, and I get interesting ideas too. One of the things that all of us who have ever put together a presentation or an article for a user group, one of the things we all understand is inspiration can come from the strangest directions.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead. Kenneth, why don't you just do some sort of a goodbye thingy, and I'll stop the recording.
Okay. Well, if nobody else has any other questions, we will go ahead and stop the recording. Thank you, John, very much. We do appreciate your presentation. It was a delight listening to
I'm
it.
glad to be of service. I think maybe I should have been a teacher, but then again, if I'd been a teacher, I couldn't afford this collection of audio CDs I have over here and these computers and things like that. Not to mention my camera gear. You know, I think at my age, the right thing to do is to share the knowledge and help other people.